Okay, so as promised, I'm going to make a short video on how to write your project proposal for GIS 200. Now, um, the time that these projects were due were past, and I think we talked about it adequately in class, but some of you still have some reservations. Obviously, I'm going to accept your proposal right up until you turn in your final project, because the proposal is one of the required components, and so it will be a separate document, and so you can make changes up till then, and I will grade them at that time and take the score. So maybe this will help you improve them a little bit and maybe get a few more points. So first things first, what is the project proposal? The project proposal is worth 25% of the final project points. You had the opportunity to submit a draft, and I gave you feedback. I didn't really give you the preliminary score, but generally speaking, the more feedback that you had, the lower your score would have been. And then you were allowed to correct everything and resubmit. And as you've continued to work on your project, if things come up that you need to change, obviously you can go back and make changes at this time. That's completely acceptable at this point. The date has passed, but like I said, I will accept them up until the final project. Because many of your proposals weren't really quite up to snuff. Many were close. Some had minor things, but some had quite a bit of editing that needed done. So I'm going to go over it in detail exactly how I want these things laid out. So first, the proposals for this class are not really like a true proposal. Generally speaking, when someone asks you to write a proposal, it's a much lengthier document. In GIS 200, the purpose of the proposal is to make sure that the things you're trying to do for your project are correct, are possible, and that you're capable of doing it. Or with my assistance, you're capable of doing it. And so it's more about me understanding what it is that you plan to try to do, so that you don't come up to me at the end of the semester and say, oh my God, I need your help, I can't do this, what's going on? So the first step in every project proposal is you must list the GIS question or problem. Now, it's a question or a problem, but it always has to be in the form of a question. I want it in the form of a question. It can be a statement of a problem, but it has to have something that you have a question about, that you can ask a specific enough question that you can, in fact, answer it. A little information on why this matters or why it's important is not a bad thing either. Just don't go overboard with it. Don't overdo it. Provide me some information that helps me understand why the question matters or why the problem exists. These are the kind of things, and it can even be something explaining a scenario that generated the question or the problem. Both of which these concepts are perfectly fine. In general, a sentence or two about why something is important is all you're looking for, and then a sentence, listing what the question is, and maybe another sentence to clarify it. But not a lot of time and space needs to be devoted to writing this. More time and space needs to be applied to thinking it out to make sure that you do it neatly, cleanly, and clearly. The proposal should outline the methods and data needed to answer the question or solve the problem. So once you've sort of laid out what the question or problem is and why it matters, you're going to tell me exactly how it is you're going to use GIS and what spatial data you're going to use to solve the problem. And so in terms of the methods, I don't want really super detailed stuff like I'm going to clip this layer with this, and then I'm going to do a spatial join with that, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm talking about general terms, like I'm going to overlay my such and such data with my other data and identify areas common to both. Is the kind of things I'm looking at, instead of saying something like I'm going to list the specific steps that you have to do to get both data sets ready prior to doing the map overlay procedure. I want you to explicitly list the data that you have in fact examined, and know it will work. Don't use generalities and tell me I'm going to use the list of planned developments in West Virginia. Well, one, that layer does not exist. And so make sure that you know what you're talking about when you tell me the data that you're going to use. If you're going to use elevation data, then tell me you're going to use the elevation data and who made the data or where the data came from. Where it came from does not mean the website where you downloaded it. It means who made that data set. And so you have to look at the metadata or the download site and see who actually is responsible for that data, and then cite it. I'm going to use a digital elevation model from the United States Geological Survey, something like that. Lastly, the proposal must indicate the type of data, maps, charts, and other output expected to be generated from the analysis. I want you to tell me what it is you're going to make in terms of your maps and how it's going to identify the location or solve the problem or answer the question that is, in fact, your project. So you need to list what you expect to make and or talk about it. Now, if you're going to list it, I don't want you to list, I'm going to make map, a table, and a chart. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm going to make a map of the blah, blah, blahs, a table where I can compare the something, something, somethings, or a chart indicating changes in the whatever, that kind of stuff, in sentences. And explain how you're going to use this to answer the questions. Is this going to be a map about where habitat exists, so you can identify which counties have habitat, or is it going to be a table showing how much habitat it is, so you can show me which counties have the most, or a chart indicating how something has changed over time to see if there's areas that are losing something. Just explain to me how it is you anticipate using this in the act of answering your question. And of course, your proposal probably will have a few sentences that tie these things together. Overall, this should be a paragraph. If you look at these first three bulleted items, the project proposal, question, you add a little information with that, you're looking at 2 or 3 sentences. Your methods and the data that you're going to use, 2 sentences. Your proposal, what you're going to make, and how you're going to use it to answer the question, 2, 3 sentences. So you're looking at 6 or 7 sentences, and maybe 1 or 2 somewhere in there because it doesn't flow well. And so you're looking at 7, maybe 8 short sentences that should form a single nice paragraph, probably no more than a half a page long. Likely, even most cases, under say 250 words. And that's what your project proposal should look like. So when you go to submit your final proposal, know that the proposal is in the homework folder named Final Proposal, or the last version added will be graded as the final proposal. So I'm not going to go in there and you don't have one named Final Proposal. I'm not going to grade it. It's not going to be like that. If you have a proposal in your homework folder, the newest one, the last one added, is the one that I'm going to grade. Scoring. How does the scoring system work? I'm going to go over it again. We've covered it before, but it'll be worth talking about for a few minutes here. Your proposal will be scored according to this metric. There's sort of 4 areas that I'm going to grade on, and each one is worth a certain amount of points. Of a 25%, the final grade, the overall design of your project is worth 10%. So you look at the 0 to 10 scale, which is where this range falls into. If I don't have one, 0. You turned one in, it was really bad, you never changed it, that's like a 2. So somewhere between 0 and 2. You turn it in and it meets all the minimum requirements, but it's really bad, you're looking somewhere between a 2 and a 4. If something is what we would consider a C level or ordinary level work, it's going to be somewhere between a 4 and a 6. If it's good work, it'll be an 8. And if it's really, really well thought out, then you would get all 10 points. For the other sections, okay, well, let me back up just a bit, and I'll give you an idea of some things. So, minimum acceptable thing, you pick the most generic possible product project to do. So I'm going to do how much flying squirrel habitat is there in the state of West Virginia. Okay, and then you say I'm going to identify the two fields like we talked about in class 1,000 times, identify the overlapping areas, and make a map that just shows that. And that's all you're going to do, and that's about all the detail you provide in your paragraph, and it's like 4 sentences long, and that was the extent of it. That's going to get you about 5 points. If you explain why squirrel habitat matters, then you're up closer to 6. If you were then, for example, to add a little more information about how you might overlay the two layers and look for common locations, and then specifically point out where the data is coming from, USGS this, the national whatever it is that made the whatever land cover data you're using, or something like that, then you're getting up closer to 8. If you were to do all those things and tell me that you're going to make a map and show how much habitat is in each of the so many counties that it's in addition to it, and explain that the purpose of this is so that you can determine, which counties have very minimal amount of habitat and which ones are in danger of losing it or something, or you're trying to, whatever it is that your question relates to, and you explain how you're going to use this to actually answer that, along with all the other things I've previously mentioned, then you're beginning to get closer to that 10 level. Okay, now the next 3 are more about specific components in the first one. So in general, if you get all 10 points on the overall design, it's likely you'll get all 15 across these next 3. So clarity of purpose in the question or problem. If your sentence is brief and to the point, but not so super specific as to make it impossible to answer if anything goes wrong, then that's what I'm looking for. If it hems and haws and goes this way and that way, and it's really not a question, and you're talking about a problem, and you go on and on and on, then you're going to not be getting there. So in general, don't turn in 0, turn in 1, but it's not a question, you're getting a 1. You turn it in, it is grammatically in the form of a question, but it's a really lame question, it's a 2. If it's like a very direct question that doesn't exhibit any kind of cleverness, then you're probably looking at 3 points. And then 4 or 5 would be a much more well-written, better kind of question. The soundness of the methodology, again, don't tell me how you're going to do it, or don't mention it at all, 0. You mention it, but it's not really clear. 1, you say I'm going to overlay the 2 data. Okay, that gives you like 2, maybe 3 points. If you're going to tell me that you're going to identify areas in this category that's over a certain elevation, and then you're going to overlay that with certain land uses and tell me what those land uses are that are squirrel habitat, then you're beginning to get more towards the 4 to 5 point level. Soundness of expected output is pretty simple too. If you tell me you're just going to make a map of these 2 things and that's going to answer everything, that's pretty weak in terms of your understanding of what you're going to get. And so, you're going to get like 2 points. If you don't turn it in, or if you really don't have a clue how you're going to use the maps and stuff to do it, you're getting 0 to 1. If you explain how you're going to count or measure the amount of habitat in each county to identify counties with the most and the least, and that you could then, depending on what your scenario is, how you would use that to answer questions, that's how you go from 3 points up to 5. And so that is the generic review on how to write a brief project proposal for GIS 200. Thank you.